So next thing we want to talk about. So I'm going to be focusing. There's a news report from Channel 3 News, WWMT, Sinclair owned station. Just FYI. And this actually ties into something we were talking about last week as well, where they ran a very similar story talking about houselessness downtown, particularly around the Arcadia area. And I'm starting to see something of a pattern emerge. And I'm gonna go into something like, I guess we call it a media cipher, where I'm gonna break down the story that News 3 reported and kind of talk about some of the inherent biases as well as what the story is highlighting, how it is doing so, etc. So I'm gonna go ahead and read from this article. This was on Channel 3 News, Friday, July 30th. Growing downtown homeless population concerns Kzoo Mall business owners. For small business owners like Lana Hoffman, having a store on the Kzoo Mall has always been a great opportunity. Downtown is the heartbeat of the city, Hoffman said, but lately businesses said they are getting increasingly concerned over the growing homeless population in the area. So we look at that previous article, that was emphasizing apartment dwellers downtown, particularly some fairly wealthy ones. If you remember those apartments in the Arcadia area, they are not cheap. And a lot of high-income individuals in that area. And now we're going just a little bit down the road. So it's kind of like framing this as like, well, we got a citizen's perspective. Now let's talk to a business owner. Now, there's something missing from this article, and I wonder if you can already tell me what it is. In both of these articles, they did not actually speak to anybody in the houseless population or deals with homeless issues. It's very important to kind of wonder why that is. But let me go down. I'm going to keep reading from here. So it directly affects us, said Hoffman, the owner of Lana's Boutique. If someone does take the opportunity to come downtown, maybe for the first time ever, and goes through the hassle of parking, and they finally get down here and get accosted at the mall by maybe a mentally ill person, they're going to leave and they're probably not going to come back. Hoffman said since the COVID-19 pandemic, she has noticed more homeless people around the downtown area and has heard customers talking about the issues. It's not just a homeless issue. There are a lot of mentally ill homeless people, and I think that's where the problem lies. So, want to emphasize a couple things there, and it's going to bleed in, especially to this little quote from the owner of Final Gravity. But you notice how the houseless population is kind of singled out for this in particular. Like, oh, there's some mentally ill people, they're scaring the customers, et cetera, et cetera. It is worth mentioning, and this is a little bit of important Michigan history to tie into this, is that it's worth noting that about 25 years ago, John Engler was governor. He basically did to our mental health care system what Reagan did nationally in the 80s, which is to say, strip mine. So funding for mental health services statewide was gutted in the 90s. While certain improvements have been made over the years, it's never really been up to scale. So again, places like Kalamazoo Psychiatric Hospital don't have the resources they used to keep patients in for long-term treatment. So you will have a lot of people with mental health issues more or less thrown out on the street. This is a real thing. That's true. I don't think we should, Lana herself or Ms. Hoffman isn't necessarily, being cruel or prejudicial, but they are also more or less like maligning the houseless population and using this kind of frame of mental illness to do it. There's a lot of bad customers that come through in various shops and stores, and a lot of them aren't homeless, and some of them are a little bit more bougie. I'm talking about the Karens and Kens out there. Give me just a second, folks. So I'm gonna be. Looks like I'm about to be joined by my co-host Lawrence. Um, Lawrence, we're in the middle of talking about the article from News 3 about houselessness. And I also think like it's important, this does speak to a certain kind of NIMBYism, not in my backyard type of stuff, because again, she's not like talking about any of the kind of structural problems behind like why there's houselessness or like potential solutions to it. Especially in the last News 3 article we talked about, the onus was like, why isn't public safety stepping up and corralling houseless people? As though that's a long-term solution. And again, as I brought up at the beginning, important to remember while we're talking about the story that News 3 is owned by Sinclair, which has a definite conservative bent. And kind of like bouncing off of that, they also talked to the owner of Final Gravity Brewing, who just very anecdotally, he mentioned an instance in July where he had advertised a food truck that was scheduled to be set up in front of his business, but said it didn't last 10 minutes because the employees felt threatened by people demanding free food. And again, what this article is doing is, again, it is painting houseless people with a broad brush. Just like any other population, you're going to have people who are not as nice or polite or are, acting up, etc. But, even though things have gotten more intense under, COVID, we've had a houseless population downtown for years. I mean, let's, not forget the houseless encampment. And what we're seeing is with these articles from News 3, a local media station is putting out a series of articles that is kind of priming people up to demonize the homeless. Now I'm not saying like, oh, this particular reporter or reporters are, evil people who hate the homeless. Oh, they might be, who knows? But that is the structural effect of running articles like this. And again, put the onus on why isn't there enough enforcement, or these anecdotes that demonize the houseless people downtown. And again, if you spent any time actually helping the houseless people downtown, they are smart, like intelligent communities of people who, through a myriad number of reasons, have kind of just been left out, can't quite get up on their feet. But it's easier to kind of narrow in on particular bad actors and use that to paint a broad brush over the entire houseless issue downtown. And one of the reasons I really bring this up, it's important, is we are in a context of a recent program through the city that was helping houseless people stay housed, recently expired. They're getting back out into the street. And instead of like think of what News 3 or even like other media could be doing. It's like drawing attention to like, why isn't there a longer structural solution to houselessness, or like what more could the city be doing, or like what has worked in other cities, rather than just running these pieces that prime people think like houselessness is a problem. Why can't we just put them all in jail? Lawrence, sorry, I've been kind of going on about this. Do you have any thoughts on this particular story?
Man, I mean, it goes back to I think it's the socialist philosophy. It's not socialist philosophy, but it's the idea that the poor are always used to scare the middle class. That we see it. We see it in our body politics. That it's always the bottom. It's always the people who are the least inclined, those that are the least among us, that do not have financial power, that do not have that does not have any means of donating to politicians or anything of the sort. It's always those people who are demonized, and some cases may be valid. You might have some people who have mental issues. You may have people who are starving. You might have people who are desperate, and some of that I'm gonna give to some of my more right wing friends. Some of that is personal responsibility, but we're going to ignore the structural issues that led those people to make those choices in the first place, or to even entertain those choices in the first place. Then we've already missed the boat. Then we're already missing it, in my opinion. So for me, when I hear people demonizing the poor, regardless if the homeless people are acting up, if they're not in their right state of mind or anything of the sort, the fact that we're not talking about, yo, we just got $40 million. You know what I'm saying? Like we just got a bunch of money that money should be being used to create more either subsidized housing or better living conditions. That money should be going to mental health care counselors and things of that nature, so we can help the people, financial supporters, and to help some of these people who are homeless to get on their feet so they can be much more productive citizens. That's not the solution that we're talking about in this article. That's not the framing that we're taking in that article. The same thing, the framing that we're using in this article is, look at these zombies. look at these monsters on our streets.
Mm-hmm. Going around flashing people, demanding free food.
I'm being really hyperbolic when I say this, and I want everybody to understand I'm being hyperbolic. But if you're looking at that article and you're not looking at it from a media analysis perspective, from a what is this story trying to tell you perspective, or what is this writer trying to convey type of message, or what is it implying, and you just take it at face value, what is it saying? These homeless people are ruining businesses downtown. Are we going to talk about a solution to fix that? No. But these homeless people are ruining the businesses downtown.
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing I just wanted to bring up, here's why I really think like this is such kind of dangerous coverage, because we're kind of at this tipping point. There's been years of really fierce advocacy on houselessness issues in Kalamazoo, and I don't like being a perpetual cynic. That has borne some fruit. We've actually kind of forced the city to conduct. I guess I call it like triage. So you actually have them doing something to help houseless encampments. Again, not enough, but something better than nothing. You actually had them putting up money, particularly during the pandemic, to put people up in hotels and motels, Holiday Inns. You actually sorry. Yeah. And you had again, at least and understand the money put into eviction deferral, preventing houselessness. So those things concretely have happened. So like now, we've gotten to a point where we can force the city to do at least a certain level of triage to help with houselessness crisis. It's like the next step is like, okay, how do you get the city to focus on these long-term holistic solutions? And you've got like two forces pulling at the city. You've got people who are a little bit more visionary. They're like, we do need to come up with long-term solutions, with idea like more affordable housing, more programs that can get people, from houselessness into, there's like tiny house programs and stuff popping up. And then there's a countervailing force, like a more kind of reactionary force that does not like all the triaging that's been going on and wants to like kind of turn back the page to when houselessness was just a policing issue. And we cannot take step backwards on that, because as I say ad nauseum, you think the houseless issue is bad now, you have 10, 20 years after, climate stuff is going down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is something we have to wrestle with and deal with, and it's something that we need to force the city to get more progressive on, not regressive on.
Facts, absolutely facts. I agree with all that you just said.
All right. I didn't have too much else on that story, but again, you can check that out. News 3's website. The name of the article was, excuse me, growing downtown homeless population concerns Kzoo Mall business owners, and they talked to was Atlanta's Boutique and the owner of Final Gravity Brewing. And to the credit, there is some stuff further on talking a little bit about, they talked to, Jeff Chamberlain, deputy city manager, but it's kind of like that mealy mouth. It's like, well, we have to balance people's safety with the fact that, like, we're working with some groups to deal with houselessness and da 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 da. That kind of like mealy mouth. It's like, oh, we're doing something. It's like, well, obviously it's not enough.
Yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep building hotels downtown that are super expensive that people can't afford to actually stay in. But places like what's that subsidized housing that's all the way off on 11th Street.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like we can't build places like that, which actually look like a decent community, even though it's like it looks like it when I compare that subsidized housing to interfaith homes or to as folks who live on the north side like myself, you've got Patwood, you got Fox Ridge. If I look at those subsidized housing in comparison to the one that's all out, the one that's on 11th Street, it's night and day. It's a night and day experience. Like in what we should be doing if we were going to be productive with the money that we're doing, with the money that we're getting, we should be putting more investment into that type of housing for people. Or what I advocated for a while ago was taking that the old health center that was on the east side, turning that into a center, another place that's kind of like the Mission, but another, so that the Mission's not overflowing. You can have the triage stuff that we're doing at that location instead of tearing down that building. We could have repurposed that building to help the homeless population. Instead, they just moved the homeless encampment from being downtown to the east side anyway, or closer to the east side.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And oh gosh, what was I gonna? Oh, and again, it goes back to I don't know, like when I started off the show talking about like the Foundation for Excellence, but yeah, think about that. Like we're getting a Hilton downtown for the strikers and the parfaits and the Chatfields and stuff, but
nice building.
it's
a fantastic hotel. Nice.
But the poorest citizens of our city are like kicking you out of the hotel, and we're gonna try to turn the public against you. So like they get to stay at the Hilton, you get to go stay at Crosstown or the county jail. It's like
yeah, we have the jail for you. That's what we have. Like, come on, man. Like, I mean, yeah, they would rather have them in the jail so that they can exploit them for free labor. I mean, like, that's just how we work in this society.
That's true. Or every nickel and dime you get from calling family members and stuff. I'm gonna go on a whole thing
Yeah.
about like the capitalist exploitative nature of the local jail. Like, that's a whole other thing.
We can spend an entire segment on that, but that's a totally different conversation.